Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Every week, we meet here on Zoom to connect, inspire, and create. And with the help of the guests, they share their images, their stories of inspiration, and some tips to help you improve your own photography portfolio. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com. And under Happiness Hour, you'll find the links to previous sessions on my YouTube channel. Tonight's guest is Vince Maidens. Vince is a Canadian wildlife photographer based in the United Kingdom. His work has been featured by National Geographic, Smithsonian, and the BBC. He's also an ambassador for f-stop. But in tonight's presentation, True to the Lens, the art of authenticity in wildlife photography, Vince will talk about ways that you can make fine art speak to the viewer and how you can create your own voice without using clickbait and gimmicks. You can see more of Vince's work on Instagram at Vince Maidens and on his website at vinceMaidensphotography.com. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Vince.
Thank you very much, Linda. How are you?
I'm good. I'm real good. And I'm really happy to have you here again. When we were kind of maybe off record, I basically, owned up to you and I met years ago through Instagram. And back in those days, which wasn't that many years ago, Instagram was fun.
Yeah.
It was
What was
fun.
that like?
It was fun. It was engaging. I met so many people that I've gotten a chance to meet in person because of Instagram. Invitations like, hey, why don't you come to my place of wherever they were? And I went and I had a great time. These days, Instagram isn't quite as, I don't know, I hate to use the word fun. It's not. It's work
It's
to get
crap.
your work. It really is. We can be candid. It's not fun. And I catch myself not posting as much. I'm also a
Yeah.
little bit, but um, I still think that it's a place that you can share your work, whether 3 people see it, who knows, but it's still out there. And I think it's viable. To a small extent. It's like I said, it's not as exciting, but I still have a bunch of really good friends that I've met. A lot of those people are in the room tonight, and I still find new people to follow and new people to inspire me. But when we were talking about, hey, would you come back and do another presentation? You asked me, well, what do you want me to talk about? And I love getting a blank check. And I immediately asked you to do one on integrity and wildlife photography. And I think I even used the word authenticity. And you're like, love it. And here we are tonight. So with that, I'm going to hush it and let you do your thing.
Cool. Thanks very much. Tell me when to start.
Start.
All right. So I'm not going to read everything because it's annoying and people just sit there and read things at you verbatim. It's more of a free flow chat for me because I think I could do a PhD thesis on this topic. I post about it a lot. Just like Linda said, that Instagram is no longer fun. Um, but it's a means to an end for a lot of people. And I think with wildlife photography, especially, sometimes that chase of the like and the follower count gets to be pretty addictive, and you start to make compromises to the way you do your work, and you actually get the image, which is in a lot of ways quite negative. Um, I've seen a lot of people have pretty stratospheric growth lately with doing, the reels is what Instagram is demanding that we do to attain any type of growth. And for me, video isn't anything that I find particularly interesting or fun. I made a reel the other day. I made some video. It was okay. I mean, It doesn't have the grip that a still image has. I mean, you can paint a picture in a lot of um, images, like the one that I'm showing right there is probably the one that I'm most known for. Um, it was a moment I can't ever create, and probably an image I'll never get better than from a uniqueness perspective, because it just doesn't happen. So you try to get these unique moments, and making these reels doesn't feel very unique. You see, the term is called doom scrolling, when you're just flashing through your Instagram, and you'll see some content that Instagram feeds you that it determines via the algorithms and a lot of AI processing in the back end of what it feels you should be seeing. May not be good, it may not be anything you're even interested in, but that's what they determine that you're going to see. And if it hits their trend models, which, if it's got the right song, if it's got the right time limit, if it's got the right templates, all these types of gimmicks that they are pushing on the community to attain any level of Instagram fame. That's the pigeonhole they're trying to put you in, and a lot of people are falling for it. So you'll see a lot of people, um, you know, going out and doing the "I'm a photographer and I made this photo." It drives me absolutely out of my freaking mind when I see that one. Or the ones where there's a guy with a lens and he's aiming it and he aims it at you, and then, or a guy in a ghillie suit climbing out of something. There's even one lately where this kid climbed out of the water with a broken camera, and it just made me laugh, because you could just imagine that people will actually think that this is something I can do with my kit that I didn't know I could, and make great images. And the fact is, it's usually, and I'm going to be completely honest, because that's just what I do. I'm not usually one that worries a lot about feelings of others in this respect at times, so pardon me. But it's usually mediocre work done with a flashy background, and people will um, gravitate towards it for some reason, because the algorithm is feeding it to mass quantities of people who aren't necessarily photographers, and you'll get a million comments and a million likes, and it's just people looking at eye candy. So that is where Instagram has taken the art of photography right now. It's producing videos that don't hold any type of attention to you. It's very quick and fleeting. So I mean, for me as a photographer, and I'll air quote artist, um, I want to produce something that resonates with people, something that they'll say, "Oh yeah, he's the guy who shot that photo." Right? Nobody's going to remember any reel that anybody's ever done in particular. So for me, I still focus 95% on my photography, and I stick to a very strict personal ethic with my photography. The animals have to come first. Yeah, I don't go chasing creatures in the field. I will find them. We'll find them. We'll go out and shoot them, either myself or in a group. And it's all about respecting what we are working with at the time. So we shoot a lot of birds, a lot of owls, and they are predators and they eat prey. And there are groups of people that find it acceptable to get out there and toss live prey at them, or dead prey. Some birds will eat dead prey, but they'll go out and toss prey at them and take the photograph, and then claim that it was an actual live predation, which it is, but it's not taken in a way that wasn't set up. So the authenticity factor of the moment um, gets lost for a lot of people, and they just see that moment happening is a means to them rushing home, processing the image or processing the video footage, and then making that into something they can post. Now, it may be 1,000 people, maybe 100,000 people that see it or like it, and that's the only value to it, right? You've produced an image that you cannot do anything more than put into a social media aspect. Um, for me, I want to be able to have the freedom of knowing that this image I've made was made ethically and follows the code of any contest, any magazine, any publication that would want it. I can say that this was made in a proper fashion. Um, and that's the key in wildlife for being ethical is to be able to take your work, display it to people, and know that the way you've made that image was proper. Um, Now we'll get into a few things like processing and whatnot too, but the biggest thing with wildlife is to make sure that the animal always comes first. You're never putting it in a situation of stress. You're never putting it in a situation of where it's actually any kind of harm or jeopardy, or you're altering the behavior, because that's one of the key factors to causing animals to die, right? Is people will bait them to the point that they, come to that same spot every day and they know there's going to be food. And then the days you don't, they start hunting less and less because they're waiting for you to show up and bring you that food. And people think it's okay, right? If it's just in my yard and I'm feeding like a carcass of something, okay. That's you're doing that, but you're still altering that bird's behavior potentially. It's quite dangerous. I mean, um, one of the things I get hit with a lot by a lot of the guys who do hide photography, which is very common in Europe, where people pay to go to a location where a person's habituated animals to come in and feed, and they put in basically a box or a room that you sit in, and the animals will come to the location, and you stick your lens out the window and you take the shot, and the guy beside you takes the shot, and it's basically a way to get an image that you're putting very little effort into doing, attaining it. So the point I'm making there is you're habituating animals to that spot and situation, and you don't know if you're unless you're an expert. You're not sure if you're actually changing that bird's behavior. Now, yes, they will come and go at their own time, but they will always come back to that spot knowing that there's pretty much a regular feeding pattern there. And they'll come in and check it and check it and check it, as opposed to going out and seeking in their territory for their own food. But they always feel that it's fine because you're supplementing the animal's food sources, and that's not a big deal. And it's hard for animals, and we're encroaching in their space. Well, okay, we are doing all of that. That's for sure. But we should allow that animal to just hunt and be its own creature, right? And not impact it in any way. And doing any type of supplementing is impacting it. It doesn't feel like it because you're feeding it, and everybody likes to anthropomorphize animals and think that they're helping them. But in general, you're not. And then I'll get the other thing I'll get is, well, why is that any different than backyard feeding? Well, it isn't in the way that you're putting out food and the bird is coming and eating it and then going off and doing its thing. Um, Little birds work a little bit differently, right? They're going to hunt and peck all around that area regardless. Even when they're feeding on the feeder, they will still go off into a tree or into the bush and pick at whatever else there is. If they see a tiny insect in the air, they'll go take that. I mean, they're still actively hunting in the area. They're just eating that food too. So yeah, it gets a bit of a strange parallel there, but it's still you are feeding it, but you're not impacting its ability to survive. It will still go off and find food in that general area, regardless. Where you get some birds of prey that will just sit there and wait for you to feed it after a while because it becomes easy. They don't want to burn the calories going out looking for their own if they know you're going to feed them, right? So, and you don't know what level of jeopardy that bird could be in. If it's just come in off like migratory predators, if they just come in and you don't know if from that day how much calories they can actually expend by going after the food that you're giving them. Prime example, snowy owls, very highly baited creature. I don't post a lot of them anymore because whenever I post, there's inevitably somebody will come at me saying, "Oh, this is a great image. You must have baited it," right? Not going back and checking out who I am or anything like that, and then I have to deal with the explanation of, "No, I didn't do that." Um, but with snowies, you'll see people go out and get these little tiny feeder mice that snakes would eat at a pet store, and they'll go out and toss them out, and the bird will come in and do a very low approach. You can always see the photos because it's always a gliding snowy over the snow, and claws out, talons out, and attacking whatever it is that somebody's put out. It's usually a little feeder mouse. Not high caloric value, but the bird is going to take it due to instinct, right? It's going to see that sitting there and think, "Oh, this stupid mouse is why it's on the top of the snow. I don't know, but I'm going to take advantage of it." And they'll go and take that. And the expenditure of the effort that it took to go get that tiny little feeder mouse, which is not much caloric density, isn't worth the flight. So you don't know what level of jeopardy that bird's in. So why make it worse or impact it in any way? So is the shot ever worth that level of interaction? For me, no. Um, I don't believe it is for anybody. Something shouldn't have to die for you to make a photograph. Even a mouse, right? It's not our judgment call to make. Um, so for owls, if you're photographing them, just know that at some point, if you make a really good one and it's interactive where you've got eye contact or it's coming towards you, you will get questioned. So having the backup knowledge that you created that image in that situation in an ethical approach is always going to serve you well. Um, being known as somebody that's ethical helps because again you'll get these folks that do these baited hides, and you don't know from one shot to the next what's actually been created with bait or not, right? So you've always got to say to the person, was this baited? Wasn't this baited? And you hope that they're going to answer honestly. Some people will. Some people who, the guys that usually own the hides are very, very upfront about it because they want people to come and use them. And then there's others that just won't say, right? You see it a lot. You'll see, um, I'll get into that actually, but you'll see a lot of people make the claim that things are actually not what they appear. Um, so that's another thing that I really get a bit of a bugbear about is the lack of clarification on what the image was when they made it. So there have been a few folks in this general area lately. I'm not going to name names because I'll get killed by someone who won't appreciate it. But there's this one fellow that he, oh God, how do I even put it? He's a guy who doesn't care at all about what he's actually shooting. And by that, I mean, he will go to raptor centers. He will go to um, hides. He will go anywhere basically where a bird will be, make an image of it, and then say nothing about how that image was made and pawn it off as wild. I mean, I've even seen it so much as he's had a few images published in newspapers saying how it was wildly shot, and then the actual raptor center came out and took claim that, oh, this is our bird, right? So it's how do you justify doing that and have your personal reputation be smeared in any way, especially if you're trying to be a professional photographer? um, it's just not a place where you want to be. You will never get that reputational uh, disconnect that you've created with your viewers back, right? You'll never bridge that gap. because they know that whatever you're putting in front of them is possibly a visual lie. Um, and I don't want to be that type of artist, right? And I think as we get to a generation of where AI becomes a very popular editing tool, or even fully generating images, we have to think about that and consider how the use of those tools um, impact what we're doing as an artist, right? Impact what we're doing from an ethical perspective. How do we use those tools and still maintain that that image is actually that image? Um, we for me, I've just basically said to myself, okay, I will fool around with AI, and I've made some really crazy images where, like obese owls. I made a series of obese owls, and posted them online just as a joke, and I was very clear that it was as a joke, but it got more likes than most of the actual wild images I've taken in quite a while, because the Instagram algorithm saw it as something very, very different, and it hit the right mark of people seeing it and liking on it at the time, and it went crazy. So very embarrassing that it was something like that superseded what I had actually done as a real image. But um, it just goes to show that these are complications we're going to have in the future. So I'll fool around with the AI stuff just to make a joke and make a point that we have to really think about what we're looking at as a viewer, not just as a creator. Um, because we have access to all of these gimmicky tools. Like you've got Topaz, denoise, and it's got that sharpen feature, and it's all of the Topaz guys come out and say that this is the greatest thing because I've saved this image um, that was basically blurry and crap. Well, okay, well, as a photographer who's been one for many, many, many years, um, when I take a crap image, I delete it. I live with my failure, accept it, and move on and go do it again. There's very few images um, that, given time and given opportunity, you can't remake something similar, right? So why go and use a tool that where you're basically altering all the pixels in it to be different than what it actually is? So is it the same image that you created and intended in your head, or is it something that the software deemed to be the new reality? Right. So you've handed over the creative process that you failed on to a software tool. Is that still an image? For me, I don't believe it is, because you've allowed all of those pixels to be altered, even if you shift them over one pixel each, right? You're still allowing that software to take ownership of that image, because it's not the image you actually made. So I urge people to really think highly about, before they commit to using those tools, um, about why they're using them. If it's just for Instagram, well, okay, fine. Um, but you might want to let people know how you did it. And that's fine. If however you disclose what you've done, um, I think that's a very good thing. It's when you don't disclose how it was created that it becomes an ethical battle for yourself and the viewer, because you're effectively just lying to everyone. And for me, I don't want to be like that. It's um, not a fun moment for me when people question the integrity of an image, right? And I lay it out there. I just say I'm not going to do this. So if you ever think it is me trying to do something funny, I would tell you, because I can't risk my personal reputation um, as a photographer and as an artist to go that direction. So seeing your image is another thing that um, people tend to forget about when they're in the field. They will start snapping and not taking advantage of the background of the entire environment that they're in as part of the image. A lot of wildlife photographers, because of Instagram, shoot in the this in their head. They shoot in the size of a phone screen, So you'll see a lot of super tight crops of birds, um, which it's fine, but it's more an exercise of what the camera can do, right? You're showing the high resolution and the dynamic range of the camera as opposed to any actual skill. Um, Being able to compose an image in your head and see that image as the opportunity arises is a skill. That is actually something that you're training yourself to do. For me, part of my process is I will think of an image that I want to see, that I want to make, and I try to see it in my head so that when I do actually see that situation happen, I know how to react. Um, this is one of those shots last 2 summers ago, I think. Um, yeah, it would have been 2 summers ago. Um, it was sunny at 10 o'clock at night. This barn owl was out hunting, flying past a stand of ash trees and something else. I don't know what they were over here. I still am not good with the trees over here. And I could see the glint of light coming through the trees and thinking, okay, if I shoot this properly, if I shoot this fairly slow and tight, it's just going to be a bird in the sky with a blacky, yellowy, orangey background. But if I shoot it properly, in the I'm going to make this shot, right? And bokeh ball is a very, very popular thing right now, and it looks cool, right? I think it's so seeing your entire image happen in your head, um, gives you something to practice on when you're not even in the field. If you know the subject that you're looking for, if you understand their behavior, if you understand the light patterns at certain times of day when you're going to be there, you can pretty much assume that I'm going to be able to say, if it's a pinky sun day, I'll go out there, I'll shoot fairly slow because I want to get a little bit of blur in the bird just to make it look like it's moving, and then a nice sharp eye, right? So I'll work on things like that. And if I see that type of situation in the environment, I'll take that shot. And most times I can eventually get there. It's a lot of trial and error, but you do get better at it as you go. So practicing in your head of how you're going to make that shot, gives you a more authentic voice when you actually create it, because you've put the effort and time into building that image. It's not just I went out there and made a snapshot of a very cropped winged bird. No, I've incorporated its world into what I see. And then you end up making a shot where you're actually happy with. You see a lot of very cropped birds today on Instagram, especially, where it's just face and then severed wings. Well, I've never seen a bird with severed wings fly. I don't find it interesting to look at. And you can't tell the difference between that shot and any other shot of the same variety. And there's tons of them. I actually did an experiment last year where I took a guy's image who just kept posting these things over and over and over. And I sent him um, a shot of his. And I said, who made this shot? He goes, oh, I don't know, but it's crap. And I thought, well, that's funny. I didn't even let him know that it was his actual own image because I didn't want to be really mean about it. But it was just the fact that if you can't even tell your own images apart from somebody else's, what's the point of making the image? Where is the artistic merit in that? So going out and seeing your shot ahead of time and not just making what you saw on Instagram happen is important if you're going to be an actual photographer. Um, that's another piece of the pie with Instagram, especially, is the social media influence. Um, we see certain types of images trending, which will always be what's in the top of your feed. And we look at them and think of, well, if this person did that and I go and do that, possibly I'm going to get the same outcome or and amount of likes on Instagram. Well, you might, but you've just gone out and made a very unoriginal image. Now it's very challenging to make continually interesting images that nobody's ever seen before. In this day and age, there's so many people with cameras and so many skilled people out there now. You actually get a lot of good content along with a lot of crap, but you see so much as you're doom scrolling through your phone on Instagram that what you're actually registering in your brain as quality over quantity basically is very slim. Right, you're seeing patterns after patterns after patterns, because if you can attest to this, is that you'll click on an image once of something, and then you'll get 40 different versions of that type of image, and you can't get rid of it almost until you go and actively seek something else out. Right, so it just keeps feeding you that same type of thing over and over, so you start to program yourself a little bit too much with that same type of image, and you'll get out there. And I've done it myself where I thought, what in the hell am I doing? How did I just make this? Because I've seen this before. And it was something that I saw on Instagram that I made without even any thought on it, which embarrassed the hell out of me. But so I've put so much effort into trying to take in really high quality images the best I can, and seeing the pieces and parts of those things that I like, and incorporate certain aspects of that into my shooting if I want to do it. I try to have my own voice. I do very, very much try to make a unique image. But that said, is there ever going to be a completely unique image anymore? I don't know. I've seen a few recently. I did a poll a while back where I asked people to post their most unique image, and there were some that were just like, yeah, I've never seen that before. But there were a lot that were very, very much formulaic, and it's a bit disheartening when people don't even realize that they're posting something that's been very much on the same basis as many other images, and they think it's unique. But that is due to the mental programming that social media influence puts upon us. There are so many challenges that we have to deal with there in socials, because you'll see very, very popular photographers who have a certain style, and they end up being copied. There's something called the European edit. The Canadian guys back home are always complaining about these European edits, and it's very, very heavily processed in Photoshop the way it looks, where super dark backgrounds, really contrasty animal or bird, and then overdone eyes. So like very, very bright eyes with I don't want to name anybody, but there's a few photographers again who are quite famous on Instagram, and they're very cartoonish. The way it looks, there was this, I don't know, the doctor's offices in the 70s, Linda. Remember, you go in and you see those giant-eyed children in the doctor's office. Well, I don't know why every Iberian lynx I've ever seen now posted in the past few months has just got these giant, crazy eyes with glassy looks in them, and overdone yellows. But that's the style, right? It's a very over processed, super saturated looking thing, and the Canadians are calling it a European edits. And they always have some kind of mist in them, or basically it's a radial gradient that somebody's just cranked the dehaze up down to negatives, and it's made a big fog in there. It's not real. Just so you know, it's never real. It's very rarely you're going to shoot in the foggy conditions and get anything that's anywhere near that, especially where it's just covering the bottom of their feet. It's just nonsense. If you see that with raptors, where you'll see a buzzard sitting on a mossy post, or an eagle sitting in snow, and then all you see at the bottom of its feet is this mist, this ethereal mist, and then everything else is completely clear. That's fabricated. They'll put that in to cover up the fact that there's a piece of bait there. So there's all kinds of tricks that people use to make it look like a pure moment when it's just really isn't. And it's something that they've learned on social media because you see it all the time. Lately, it's just been constant. So what I've been doing in my stories just for a bit of fun, for my own joy and being a bit of an a-hole at times, I will go and create one of these magical images that these guys have made and just to I'll tell you how I did it and the trickery that goes into it. And it's usually really simple, and you can tell it exactly how they do it. But it's just a bit of fun that I have just to call out the fact that this is crap and don't follow trends when it's not even a good trend. So um, we really want to not be in that situation where you're creating fake environments just to put something interesting into the image that's actually not there. Try to make the image as interesting as possible in camera, and you'll manage a far better shot. Like this barn owl. Okay, so it's a barn owl landing on the post, but that's 3:38 in the morning. Um, when the sun is just coming up, it was the weirdest pink sky I'd ever seen, and that's exactly how it was. That is barely any editing. That's gone into a couple of contests now, and they've hit me up for raws right away because you can't believe it, right? So being able to have that proof that what you shot is authentic um, really helps. So obviously I shoot in raw. Any contest I enter, I always make sure that they request raws or I don't enter because it's not a level playing field. I'm going to call out one Sony World Photographer contest is a joke. Don't enter it. I boycott it at all costs. Um, if you look at what they allowed to win last year, which was a completely AI generated image, which was picked by I think it was the San Diego Museum of Photography, actually picked that image as the winner. The lady who's the uh the oh, what do they call her? What's that? Curator. Yes, thank you. Actually picked this completely fabricated image as the winning image of the year. And she refused to believe that it wasn't. And I've spoken to the guy who created the image. And we had a really interesting discussion. And he just can't believe that they allowed it. And the stupid thing is, Sony as a camera vendor, you would think they would want to have their actual cameras being used for their own photo contest, but no, they don't check raw. And again, this year they don't check raw, and they still allow AI images. So to me, it's if you win that contest, well, okay, but how do you know if that image is even real? You don't. So I shoot raw, and I have that ability to say, okay, this is exactly how this image was. This is as close to as perfect as I could get to what you see today in the camera, and I stand by it. And I think it's important to be able to back up your work if you need to back it up. Now, most people don't care. Um, I'll admit that most people don't go to the level that I will go to make sure that people know that what I'm doing, in essence, is exactly what you see in front of you. But that comes from, I think, years and years and years of being an owl photographer, right? You're never stop being questioned. So I'm very much used to being able to produce a factual backup to what I've been doing. Pardon me as I take a drink. So in another example of creating an image where you see your environment and know that you're going to be able to make something pretty out of it. Um, Now this image is a lion laying in the grass, super early in the morning. The sun is literally coming up behind her head. Um, our guide got us into that spot. He raced across the savannah to get us there because he knew that if there was anything there, it would be perfect. And lo and behold, there's some lions there that had just made a kill earlier in the evening, and she was having a bit of a rest. We got there, the sun glowing behind her ears. Now, you can fake that. You absolutely can fake that. Um, and people do it all the time with backlit images because it's pretty easy to do. Um, but again, knowing that I have the raw to back me up, I don't have to worry about that. If anybody questions me, that I can't produce the factual backup to say that this image was created as authentically as possible. Um, so in this environment, there's the mountain behind her, there's sun coming up over the top, and using that light to my advantage, I was able to take a pretty messy looking background with a lot of grass and turn it into just a blurry um, backlit shot. Uh, it it's a hard shot to make because you're shooting basically directly into the sun, so you have to spend the time to get it right. Um, these are some of the things that people that get mentors in photography will work really hard with people that ask to do this type of photography. More and more people are trying to get better at backlit. Um, as it does look pretty, and it gives you that bit of a feather in the cap that you've done something a bit out of the norm. You know, most people would have been on the other side of that image where it was a nice pinky ready light glowing on her entire back, right? She would have probably shifted at some point and you would have got the face and the whole body in that perfect light. But to me, a bit more compelling image. So trying to do something different in your creativity process is always something you should strive with. Get the image of the animal in the position that you want, in the perfect light that you want. And then as you progress, as soon as you get those types of images, start thinking about different processes to do and try different things. Wildlife photography, any photography, is about being creative. You know, you're painting with light, basically. If you ever look at Art Wolf, you know, probably one of the best examples of somebody who's an actual painter who's applied the same types of methodology to his photography and it works. I've learned a lot from art in the past, and um, trying to think as a artist and as a photographer at the same time is incredibly hard, especially as I have absolutely no talent whatsoever in artistry, or any type of painting or drawing. Just awful. Not my forte. But looking at patterns, looking at different types of angles that you can shoot, using fence posts and fence lines as part of your creative process is something interesting, and it's unique, and you're not seeing a lot of people doing it. So I always try to look for an advantage, an angle that I can be at, high, low, mostly always low, um, but incorporate something into the image that shows that it's part of the environment. Like this image, this probably one of my favorite images I've ever made. Actually, um, I had this shot in my head probably for a decade, if not more, of a barn owl flying over an icy, misty field, thinking I'm never going to get this. Well, one day we drove in um, to our local spot, got out. It was icy. It was misty. The sun was coming up. It started to bring the mist up out of the warming field, and lo and behold, this barn owl decided to fly right through it. Right, and there's this giant ash tree in the back. I mean, I couldn't. Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those shots that you think, wow, I actually saw this in my head, and I knew what I was going to do at the moment. Right, so having the ability to incorporate all of those elements into an image um, doesn't need a lot of AI, right? You've made an image that's interesting. You've made an image that you can claim as a genuine article and be happy with it. So for me, using different techniques in the field, um, quite important in my creative process. I will do a lot of very slow shutter speed, because owls tend to fly either in very, very dark points of the day, and you need to work with the light you have, right? So if I go down to 1/40th of a second, what's that going to look like, right? Well, I try, and a lot of the times I'll fail. It'll look terrible, and then there's going to be those moments where you'll get a shot um, that kind of blows your mind. You've got really blurry wings in a very sharp face. This instance, it was just starting to be sun up, starting to lift some of the mist up. I knew I wasn't going to be at a lot of shutter speed, so I went. I think I was at I'll check 1/200th of a second, right? And just following along this bird and making a pile of images. I actually shot probably 24, 25 images to get this. Um, but I knew I put the effort into knowing what I was going to do in that moment. So I had it all planned out, and I knew if I did this, I'd probably get this result. So again, planning for me is a paramount process to what I do. I should have put a title here. So yeah, so this image taken 2014, yes, in Siberia. Pre conflict, was working in Russia at the Olympics for a few months, and um, found a guy who had all kinds of eagle owls in his vicinity, and I got friendly with him and um, went to visit, and it was awesome and just a great bird. Never going to get there again. Never going to get into a Blakeston's fish owl in that area either because of the conflict that's gone on. So I was happy to have that my moment with these guys, um, using the tree as if I move 1 foot to the right, I could see the entire bird. Um, I got images of the entire bird, but I made this image by moving a foot to the left and blocking half of its face with the tree, um, just to make it something a bit different, showing that is the animal being cunning, right? Is it looking at me? Is it looking through me? Right? Trying to create the story of what this bird is doing. Now, it simply was just sitting there, wasn't bothered. It stayed there all day, basically. Um, Looked at me from time to time. It was fine. But trying to utilize the situation in your environment into making that image a bit different um, comes into play. You have to put some effort. You can't just sit there and wait for that image to happen. Sometimes you have to move around a bit and take part in your own creative process. And in this case, having that bird just sit there and turn its head and watch me move about a bit worked to my advantage. This ended up being in Canon 100 or 400 brochure back then. That's how old this is. So yeah, just trying to get your personal view and expression into the image is important. If you want to be super creative, you have to start thinking about how do I um, how do I get this into a bit more of an uncharted space with what I've got in front of me, right? So get up and move. Here's a long crested eagle in Kenya. We were sitting watching leopards sleep at that point. Basically, just fed a mother fed her son, and this guy just landed in the tree just before it went and took a scrub hair out of the grass. It came in and sat down and had a look. So this is almost the exact same spot. Again, vehicle situated straight ahead of it, and then 2 feet, well, 4 feet back. Asked Jimmy to move the vehicle behind in reverse a little bit, just change the position, right? And it completely changes the outlook of the image. Having the bird looking to the back, giving it more space on the right, showing it that it has a place to move, cropping and composition. something I wasn't going to talk about, but I think in this case is important. Um, for me, I'm not a big rule of thirds guy, but I will almost always, if the bird is looking to one direction or the other, I'm going to give it a flight path in the direction that it's looking. I just think it's aesthetically pleasing and it makes sense, right? It's what the bird would actually do. Is it's if it was to fly at that moment, it would have flown to the right on the right image. If it would have flown if it would have flown at me, probably in the first image. So using that environment to gather the image and then moving about causes a totally different effect. So don't be shy in movement. Now, some creatures like deer and those types of things, which I don't necessarily get much chance to shoot, are far more sensitive to movement than, say, a large bird of prey. Um, they aren't interested in you particularly because you're big and not their food source. They're only really interested in what they can eat. So you become unimportant. Now, if you approach them too close, they're going to fly and then waste calories and nutrition on getting away from you because they don't want to be near you. So don't encroach on them. But if you're in the general space that they're in, they tend to not care. So don't make them care. Simple. That's one of the most authentic ways of being a wild photographer is don't make the creature care about you. I'm very happy if I don't have any interaction whatsoever with any creature I'm ever with. So that tends to come with humans too. But I digress.
I was going to say that.
Yeah. You knew where I was going.
I know where you're
Um,
going.
so this is again in Kenya. The little family on a termite mound. I got several different versions of this image because we moved the vehicle all around. Um, having Charlotte in the vehicle at the time, she was dictating where we were driving. She won't watch this, so I'm not worried about that. She was positioning the vehicle, and the thing was, you could make 1,000 different versions of this same image just by moving around this silly mound. They weren't going anywhere. They were looking. They were looking for food. Mom was looking. The kids are looking at what mom's looking at because they're learning all the time. So having that movement ability and being out of their eye line, being low, gets you to the opportunity to create these types of images. Um, here's a family of barn owls from this summer. Um, two very different images. One, the kids are waiting quietly in their window for parents to come back and bring them food. There's always one that's looking not at you, so you just take the shot you get. But you take the shot. And then on the right is the incoming one where dad is the one on the far right coming in with the kids in a bowl, and then the others just launching on him to get that food. Happens very, very fast. So being ready is another key component to the situation. Now, Linda, you've been to this spot. Um, just so you're aware.
Now I'm
Um,
familiar with the spot. I'm not familiar with all those owls right there.
well, no, we didn't have that luxury. You came too late in the year, but that you come a little bit earlier.
We
Um,
do it, sure.
yeah, yeah, I'll get you back.
But I
So
know that barn.
yeah, you know that barn, and a lot of people know that barn. Um, but it's funny. Quite often we're there, nobody else around. Like Linda, nobody around. Um, but there have been people that go right into that barn and approach the babies, right, and try to take photos of them in a really, really poor ethic choice. And you'll see them on Instagram from time to time too. At least I have seen them. Where they're right inside the barn. And you have to sit there and wonder to yourself, was it worth it? If you push the parents out to the point that they don't come back to feed these babies, um, what have you done? You've killed a family of barn owls, or why is that a good way to get that one shot that you're going to share on Instagram that gets 4 likes, right? Was it actually worth it to you and the environment that you're in? It's not. You have to always consider the impact that you're going to make from taking that photograph. Now, clearly, those babies are looking right at me, so they know I'm there. Um, Barn owls or owls in general, tremendous hearing. They can hear your heartbeat from quite a distance. So you going in there all camouflaged or trying to sneak up on them, you're not. I mean, they're not a stupid creature. They know exactly who's there and where you are and what you're doing because they can see and they can hear. Um, if you put them in a jeopardy situation, they leave the space. That's a simple thing. They have wings, they fly. Um, but again, you don't know what level of nutrition they're in at the moment. So why make them use those calories to flee you just for a photograph? Um, these guys were perfectly happy with us there. We were there for hours and hours, and they just sat there, and the parents kept coming in and out and feeding. Right. So if you're doing that, and you see the creatures acting comfortably, just take the solace in that you're probably doing the right thing. Right. Make your images. Stay there. Be quiet. Just be and enjoy them, right? You don't need to interact with them. You don't need to pet them. You don't need to go see exactly what they're doing. This is the shot that they're giving you. Take it. Um, this guy, again, same cat, um, just a couple of different locations, right? It's exactly the same cat walking as we were moving backwards. So we were shooting basically directly in front of them as they were walking towards us. And as they moved, we moved further away. So he had no problem with keeping on coming in directly, right? A big male lion like that, with the look on his face that he has, he's going to go wherever the hell he wants anyhow. But if you're in his path at a close distance, he's going to veer off and go a different way, which may run him into a competitive pride, which may run him into any other type of jeopardy. It could run him into a cattle um, group grazing, right? And then have to deal with a Maasai warrior that's not happy to see him, right? So there's all kinds of situations that you, again, don't want to put that creature in to get your photograph. Just be out of its space, right? We all have fairly long lenses in this game. Um, we can use that advantage that we have of distance to make the shot. Now, a lot of people um, I've noticed are using short lenses for small birds and stuff like that, which seems to be just fine. Doesn't seem to bother the birds very much. But approaching larger creatures with smaller lenses, not always the best choice. Um, well, obviously, a male lion would not be your choice to get like a 135 and get right in his face. Um, but we all have the kit now. If we're doing this, we can rent it, we can buy it, and um, using it to its limits is what we should be doing, right? This is that I shot this at 830 millimeters with a 600 on a with a 1.4, I think it was, or no, I mean R7, just the R7. So 1.6 crop, and it we were quite a distance away. It's perfectly sharp. It's perfectly clear. Um, he didn't care we were there, right? So the impact that we left on his day was minimal, right? So I felt good in making a direct eye contact image simply because I wasn't anywhere near him for him to actually care. Um, Doing something a bit different. Um, the marabou stork, not a pretty character. Very, very hard to appreciate what they look like, but they're basically a dinosaur looking creature that has a very important purpose. And trying to shoot things that necessarily aren't the most attractive, but have a story. right? These guys are a cleanup crew. Everything in the Mara um, follows the cycle of birth, life, death, and then recycling, right? So these are the recyclers. Um, but if you take a look at that, there's all kinds of color in him. The sheen and the greens and the blues in his feathers, and the color of his really strange head, and then the woodiness of his beak, right? It's all very almost comical or some kind of crazy artist creation looking thing, right? So putting it together and taking advantage of a moment with a creature that wouldn't normally get that photograph um, makes for something a bit interesting. At least I think so. I mean, I like this image. Um, it's different, right? You're not going to see it every day. So making an image that people aren't going to see every second of the day through their feed um, becomes a bit more interesting. And then on the juxtaposed there is the short-eared owl, which the past few months, I don't think anybody has not seen a short-eared owl in their feed at least 100 times a day. They're super common right now. They have exploded in Europe. Thousands and thousands have come across from Scandinavia, making their way down through the UK and the western edge of Europe, and they're everywhere. So there's piles of them around, and you see a lot of, like I said earlier, images that aren't very interesting of shorty faces flying with no wings and no feet. Well, okay, you've got a camera with fairly good resolution. That's what you're showcasing. You're not actually showcasing an image. So taking that type of bird and then having it do something a bit different and being ready for that moment, that's where you get more of a unicorn type of shot. Now, I've seen lots of different wing positions on birds and seen this one, I'm sure, before, but it's just a bit different. It's coming in for a landing on top of that barn owl box that did have a barn owl in it, funny enough. And it's just stretching out and coming in. So having captured that moment, it looks, now that I've told you that it's just landing, that's what it's doing, but it does look like it's doing a bit more of a Saturday Night Fever kind of bit of fun position, and it's just coming in for a landing and doing a balancing act. Um, there are features in cameras now like pre-capture and some of the more AI functions for capturing images like this. This I shot with the R5, so it doesn't have that feature, but like the R7 does, there's lots of different cameras that have a pre-capture feature now. You can get pretty awesome bird and flight shots with them. Um, Basically, you'll be sitting there and just training your camera on the bird and hoping for it to fly. Like these bloody rollers, and they take forever to leave at times. They'll sit there forever and then finally leave. And then when they do, it's this big flash of color and speed. So I'm going to try pre-capture. That's one gimmick that I will try, I think, because um, you possibly can get some cool shots. Um, but I would tell people that I used it because it wasn't me necessarily just taking that split-second shot. It was the actual camera running through a film process almost, and then allowing me to capture that image. Um, Pardon me, it's dry in here tonight. Must have been talking for a while now, Linda. Tell me when to shut up. Um,
I'm not going to tell you when to shut up, but
okay.
you know.
Are we getting close? Oh, we're getting okay. We got a bit of time. Again, taking something that's a bit different, right? Is looking for patterns in your in what you're shooting, and then adding something really contrasty, like the oxpecker here, right? So you've got your standard zebra. Um, I'm getting trained, sorry. And these little guys are just on there picking off nits and ticks and any kind of bug that lives on these creatures, and they do a great job at healing wounds. And they're one of the things I like to shoot in the Mara because they're all over the place. You get all kinds of different chances to shoot them when the big predators are sleeping, and they do really wild, crazy little actions. And and they're a lot of fun. So, but looking for how you can use their position where they are on a stripy animal like this, or a giraffe, or something that's got some kind of interesting patterns on them, really makes an image a bit more entertaining. Um, you're adding you're adding the color, you're adding the shapes. Even there's a lot to look at in images like that, even though you're not really seeing very much at all. Um, so trying to take advantage of um, those shapes and patterns, I think is a cool way to better your process. Um, this guy, um, I'm gonna let you try to figure out if you see it before I tell you. I'll tell you at the end. But
What am I looking?
um, so this is a tree angama,
Okay.
and it's a fairly small lizard in Kenya. Um, you see them quite a lot. And this guy was really, really comfortable just hanging out on that branch, trying to warm up for the start of the day. Um, the colors though are just awesome, right? You see that sheen and just the complete gradient of every blue and green color and yellow you can imagine is in this guy, right? And as he makes eye contact, I think eye contact is really important in wildlife photography for most images. I'll always try to get some kind of um, eye contact in there. But one of the interesting things about this image, not that it's just an angama sitting on a thing, but take a look at it. Take a look at its ear. You notice anything in its ear, which is that that brownish half moon. I
My
know it'll make
eyesight's
you.
really
So in that little half moon of a brown patch under its jaw, or just above its jaw, I should say, um, behind its eye, you'll see that a little tiny fly, iridescent
bad.
fly that's in that ear. Um, so it's like two creatures in one for me here, getting him and that fly. What that fly was doing, I don't know. It sat there the whole bloody time. It was really weird, but it might have been warming up too. I don't know, but I just thought it was cool that seeing that level of interaction happening between two different creatures at the same time, where it was just a little bit more unique.
And then the color of the fly just kind of blends right into it. I'm
Yeah,
going to give
that's what.
credit. I think it's Karen that said it right off the bat. Fly. So Karen gets a little credit there. I
Thank you,
have
Karen.
old eyes, so I have old
Yeah,
eyes. So I'm
well,
like, I know what I'm looking for. Okay, but
but
a
yeah,
twofer.
so twofer. Yeah, that's right. I haven't used that term in a long time. But thank you, Linda. Um, using angles. This is Nalangu, a pretty famous leopardess in the Mara on the hunt. She was after some wildebeest that were traveling, and we were able to get to an angle that it looks like we're right on the ground with it. Um, we were not. We were in the game vehicle, hanging at the side of it, but still a couple of feet off the ground, and nowhere near her. Using the technology to our advantage and keeping out of her way, because she was actively in pursuit hunt mode, as you can see. Um, and she had a group of wildebeest in her sights, and she was trying to discern which one she was going to go for. Had we been right in the way, right, you would have stopped her from hunting effectively at all. So when you go on any type of photographic trips, really do your due diligence on who you go with. I can't stress that enough. You want to go with really good guides. You want to go with photographers you respect. Um, but you also want to go with people that you know are going to make sure that they put you in a situation that you're not stopping what that animal's doing from naturally occurring. And in this case, she did not complete the hunt. The hyenas came and blew up her entire morning. Um, she was just about to take after a calf, and the hyenas just popped up over the hill, and she just realized, okay, well, there's no point in even trying, because the second I take this thing, they're going to be right there and take it from me. So failed hunt on her attempt, but it was no fault of ours. It was a complete fluke that the hyenas were in the way. Like I said about lines, right? Using a fence post or a fence line as a piece of the image. Um, it's basically just a barn owl on a undulating hill with a fence line on it, but using the fence to make it a bit more interesting. Um, I think really works in this case. I did get some flight shots of it coming off there as well, but I quite like the way the feet and the body are positioned to block the most of the top of the fence line, and it just leads. It's a nice leading line through it. The bee eater, no, I just like a bee eater. I threw one in. Um, they're just really cute little guys, super fast bird. Just a real treat to shoot because they get puffed up like that, and they're all colorful and interesting. And there's little bees that are flying around its head. Not at the moment because it just snapped one before I took that shot, which is why its wings are like that. And it had reached out, grabbed a little bee flying around its face and ate it, and was just settling back down on its little perch. Um, but that background is completely the way it was. You know, if you've got a fast prime, and you're at a good distance, you can be at f8, which this was, and still get a really blown out background without doing anything trickery to it. I know there's a lot of people that'll over process backgrounds and stuff. Again, you can't do anything with that image other than social media. It just becomes digital art, which is completely fine if that's what you want to do. Make digital art. Like Linda and I were talking about composites earlier. A friend of hers likes to make composites. You know, that's cool. I mean, it's art. You can do whatever you want, but you have to be able to portray it to the viewer in the way that's honest. So if you do make those edits, own it, right? You don't want to be caught out as a liar. So just own it. You know, enjoy yourself, but own the process that you've used. Um, this the big girl, quite old. We were in the Masai Mara. Obviously, there was a storm coming in. It was getting quite dark. Um, and we could hear the thunder and lightning happening in the background. And we just sat there for a while. She came walking up to the vehicle, and this is at I think 17 millimeters, so very close. She wasn't bothered. They have no issue or worry with people whatsoever. They control their own environment and situation, and they will leave if you're bothering them. So she was perfectly fine. You could see her trunk extended down and bent as she's picking up some grass. So she's free feeding right there. And then we have the storm in the background. Um, again, if you just become part of their space and don't make any kind of wild movements, they'll either investigate or come close enough to get what they're after and just go about their day and you're not a problem. So um, they're more than happy to just live their life if you let them live their life.
Hey Vince, can I slip in a question?
Of course.
Um,
Please.
okay, so Kevin's question is, what is your view on using flash in bird photography?
Yeah. Um, I used to try it. I never got an image out of it that I couldn't do equally as well with natural light. So I just use natural light. I use it a bit for some macro stuff that we tried last year, but other than that, I don't use it at all. I have a flash somewhere around here somewhere, but yeah, I don't use it at all.
Then let me,
You know, I had the whole better beamer thing and blasting out fill light, but you don't really need it anymore. I mean, cameras are far better and far better dynamic range anymore. You can bump up the ISO and not be worried about it.
okay. But what do you think about people using it
Oh,
just for
um,
welfare?
okay. So for a nocturnal creature, it's not nice. I mean, does it damage them? I don't know. I've talked to lots of different Research Institute folks about it. and they're of the mind that if it's nocturnal, don't do it just because their eyes are accustomed to that level of light. Is it actually harming them? They don't know. You'd have to actually do an autopsy on one to see if it's and repeated flash impacts to get any kind of idea whether or not you actually were. It's not worth it. So um, yeah, I mean, if you look at any of my images, I don't think I have any from the past 20 years that have a flash involved. If it's like a Pell's owl or something like that, if you might see them with car headlights, okay, well that's different. They're actually utilizing the car headlights to hunt the bugs and frogs that might be attracted to them. So they're leveraging what you're doing with that artificial light to hunt. Um, you never really get a great image with them anyhow. I find you always see like blown out eyes and blown out highlights. It's not great, but I mean, yeah, I just err on the side of caution and just don't.
Okay,
Do I judge
thank you.
people that do? Not particularly, but I mean, because I don't know if it's actually causing any harm. So I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Okay, continue.
Uh, yeah, okay. So this one, really tired mom looking after these little nightmares of children that she had with her. And this is the one moment where they actually rested for a few minutes. It's on a big rocky outcrop in the Mara. There is a very cluttery background to this that you don't see because it's been blown out um, in camera. But again, this is another situation where movement. Had we been head on, we wouldn't have got the head tilt of the baby or the annoyed look of the mom, but would have got a really cluttery background. So positioning, it all comes down to being in the right position. And again, if you're going to go on trips with folks, make sure that they understand the art of positioning and the guides understand it and take the direction that are given. Because it makes the entire difference to the image. Anything that is in the way you're going to create in your image and make a mess, right? And if you're spending plenty of money to go on these trips, which you inevitably will, you want to make sure you get the most bang for the buck. So understanding composition and backgrounds are important. So getting in the proper space for that is equally important. Um, this one's a bit hard, so sorry if anybody's sensitive, but nature is nature, and this is what happens. This is a young cheetah learning on a very young gazelle um, what to
They're
do.
just playing. They're just playing
Yeah,
tag. That's
yeah,
what.
yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, what you don't see here are any vehicles, right? In places that we tend to operate, you aren't you aren't in a situation where there's a lot of other guides in them. One thing you'll notice if you go to India or in some places in Africa, um, any places with a lot of photo opportunities like this, you'll see big open areas, usually national parks that allow a lot of vehicles to come in. And in those cases, you'll have um, lots and lots of vehicles chasing. Um, so it interrupts the hunting patterns of the animals. It puts them at jeopardy. Cheetahs are very susceptible to being taken by lions because they're not a very big cat. I mean, they're as far as cats go, they're a good size, but they're not a very big cat. They're quite fragile. Their whole life is speed, right? And being speed makes you very light. You're going to be very light, being very speedy, and they aren't any competition to any lion. So circling them with vehicles blocking their view to open plains is very, very dangerous for them. Hyenas come in, lions come in, and this is one of the reasons why, cheetah are at a record low, right? Is people. It's our fault, right? It's people taking them as pets out of the wild. It does happen. I'm sure nobody reports it, but I'm sure it does, because if you go to Dubai or places like that, I've seen cheetah in cars, right? So how do they get there? There's not a big free trade in cheetah, right? Zoos aren't readily giving them up. So how did they get them? You have to question that. But again, you do not want to be the reason why that cheetah is killed, right? Or the cubs are killed because you're trying to get a photograph. And that's you'll see in some of the parks where 100 vehicles are at one sighting, right? So you've got this mile long of cars, and some cats doing something like this. And yeah, it's a very interesting image to get if you can get it, but at what cost? Right? You don't want to be in that situation. So you'll see a lot of tour operators offering extremely cheap safaris to places, but you'll be in a big throng of people. Um, this image made it a little bit different. We were, again, elephants. You tend to be. This is a wide angle shot, so you tend to be very close. They will readily come up to you, or allow you to be close to them, because they're wise creatures. They know the situation. They can move, and they're really big. And I wanted to show the vastness of the Mara here, and put the tree in the background, which it's a big giant acacia tree. Like if you've ever seen one, they're just a massive thing, big wide canopy on top, and then it just looks so dwarfed by this giant creature. But it's very far away, but it's an optical illusion type thing where it looks like a little mushroom on the ground, but it's a giant tree, and there's nothing else to be seen there. So trying to have the environment be part of your your shot in creative ways, as opposed to just being there, is always a bit of fun. Um, this is Tito. She's no longer with us, apparently, so they say. But again, modeled light, trying to work with the creature in their environment. Had I used fill flash on that, if I brought it back up, I would have had no darkness in her face. It would have just been all light on the cat. But again, is the world they live in that way? It's not, right? They live in the shadows. That's a leopard, right? They live in the shadows. So using the shadows as part of the interplay in the image is what I wanted to go for. Plus, I really thought it was cool that the tail went through the tree. That's just a hole in the tree, so she threw her tail through there. Again, not something you'd normally take a photo of. This was right after I shot that red lit lioness that I had right at the start of the presentation. This is one of the cubs holding off a fully adult topi. Um, that cub might have been 3 months old, 4 months old, and then you've got this very large topi standing there staring at it, scared to death. And you could just, I tried to make it part of the image that, okay, so you've got this little cat, and she's going to be really big one day, and they might go after that topi someday. But right now it's just little, but it's showing that here I am in the food chain. Here's who I am, and you're there, and you stay there, right? Just a bit of a interplay. So this one, I could have quite easily taken that branch out and had a far cleaner image, but I can't. This was a finalist in the Greatest Masai Mara competition last year. Didn't win. I won't even get into that because, yeah. But it's a cool image. It's a image pretty hard to make. That was not an easy shot, because they're such a flighty bird. really trying to keep focus on it was a challenge at 900 and some millimeters, and then keep the female in the shot too. Um, Again, a challenge, but I could have taken that branch out and made it a prettier image, but I didn't because it would have been, again, lying to the viewer, and I couldn't put it in the contest because the contest demands that you have a raw, and part of the other contest demands is minimal edits, right? You work with Ruth all the time, and she's constantly going about what's acceptable from an edit perspective in contests, right? Um, had I removed that, it would have been ineligible to any contest that didn't have a creative category. Because as soon as you start taking things out, you go into digital art space, and then it becomes a creative image. Well, that's not where I want to be. I want to be showcasing myself as a photographer, not as a digital artist. That's not where my headspace is. If it is yours, go for it. But again, be authentic, own it, tell people what you've done. And there
Speaking
we
of
are.
Ruth, I was going to say,
Yes.
what a great segue. Speaking of Ruth, she'll be my speaker next week.
Lovely.
And we're going to
I
talk
didn't even
about
plan
gun.
that.
I know, right?
Oh,
And
where
we're
are
going to
you?
talk about,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I'll watch the replay because it's too bloody late, but I'll watch the replay for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you checked all my boxes, sir. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Gave me what I wanted for this presentation. And for that, I'm super excited and appreciative. Let me see if there weren't any questions. There were some nice comments in here, but no one, I don't know. Everybody went dark on me. So I don't see any hard questions
That
at
was a lot
all.
of talking.
It was a lot of talking. That's okay. Um, Okay, let me look. There was one question in here because I just have to ask it. Okay, so my friend Henrik was just curious.
Oh
Can you
no.
tell us?
Oh, God.
Y'all,
What
I'm
does
referring to
Henrik have to say for himself?
Henrik Nielsen. So
Uh-huh.
go look him up. But
Yeah.
these two guys just go at it all the time, and it just cracks me up. But he's just curious. Is there a
Uh-huh.
speed limit on your shutter speed? Is there something, do you top out at a certain shutter speed?
Uh,
And I
oh
just had
God.
it
I
made me
can't believe
laugh.
I'm gonna even answer. I can't believe I'm answering this guy, this Danish clown. Um, um,
You don't
no,
have,
I've never shot at 1/8,000th of a second, that's for sure. But I've seen some people that tend to like to do that. There's one YouTuber guy that does it quite a lot. That Bro knows something, but it's not photography, and he tends to shoot those types of things a lot. I don't.
well,
I don't know, Henrik. How about you?
oh, he's not even here. He threw it in
Oh, he did it. He
through
left.
with a proxy of all
Oh, did
things.
he?
Can you imagine?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I wonder who that proxy was too.
Wasn't me. It wasn't me. I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't do that. It was
Uh-huh.
not. It wasn't. But Vince, thank you so much for doing this. And you're just going to be you're on the hook for maybe next February coming back because
Okay.
this is what we do. So
Yeah. Yeah.
don't say no because I've got you on tape. So I'd love to have you come back. And you are doing okay. I don't know that other people know, but I know. And so I'll just tell everybody. You and Charlotte Rhodes are going to be doing workshops in Kenya.
Mhm.
That is something that you guys are planning, and you're actually going pretty soon to do some scouting for that. So
Yeah.
if Kenya is on your bucket list, and take a look at Vince's work, take a look at Charlotte Rhodes's work,
And
and
Laura
if
Dyer. I'll add her in there too.
yeah, I
She's our
don't know
partner
her.
in crime. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't. But
I'll get her
Laura,
to do a presentation. She's a hoot.
okay, well, you need to
Okay.
whisper. But those guys are starting to do heavy scout. Well, I don't know that Charlotte needs to do any scouting. She's been there what 30 times, something ridiculous,
Or more. Way more than that, I
more
think.
or more. So she knows that place like the back of her hand. And when I look at your work, and I know you guys as people, so as friends, Charlotte to me is the artistic. She can take a take a cheetah and
Oh
make it
yeah.
look like a cheetah I haven't seen. And with your technical background, you know those cameras, you know how to get it in the camera, and you have helped me. So if you can help me, I know you'll help other people um get those shots. And y'all, he's more patient than he lets on, but so that's something that hopefully maybe next year when you come back you can share some of those photos from the this scouting expedition. But
We'll figure out another topic for me, and I'll give me a year to plan it, and you're fine.
I love it. I love to just like I have blank checks with a lot of people and I do cash them. So I will take full advantage of that. All right, Vince, thank you so much. Thanks for staying up so late because it's probably
Yeah, no
around
worries.
3 o'clock.
It
It's
is,
late
yeah.
for you, but I appreciate
Sorry I
it.
rambled on for so long.
That's okay. It was good. All right, next week, Ruth Hoyt will return to the Happiness Hour to present Do You Have the Winning Photo? She's going to share tips and strategies for entering and winning photo contests. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we will see you again soon.